Good afternoon and welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and start our webinar here. My name is Teresa Crothers. I'm the Reseller Sales Manager here at Verio. And I want to thank you for joining us today. We have an exciting and interactive webinar lined up for you which will focus on how to increase signups and sales. We are recording this webinar and we will send our registrants a link in case you would like to share the information with a colleague or a business partner. As I mentioned, this webinar is interactive, so during the presentation, we will ask for some volunteers to send us your domain name via chat to provide real examples. Time allowing, we will select a few domains at random to walk through some quick landing page tweaks. And with us today, we have Kai Marash, one of my colleagues from our Europe team. Kai, I'll let you take it over from here and introduce our fabulous speaker that we have today.
Welcome here from Europe. I have done this webinar with the speaker, non-tenant, for a few weeks ago, and it's a really good presentation and really good content. So we wanted to share this with you and do this webinar for the US audience as well. And now we are here. And non-tenant is an experienced international speaker and has helped hundreds of people to optimize their landing page efforts. He's an expert in both marketing and copywriting as well as web design. He's the author of the conversion rate optimization course Attention Theory 101 and numerous articles and reports, and has written for Copyblogger, Smashing Magazine, Kissmetrics, ProBlogger, Unbound, and many others. Non is joining us from New Zealand today, where it's already Thursday morning, very early morning. So here live from the future. Non, the stage is all yours now.
Thank you very much. The future is a little bit chilly, a little bit dark. I am Non, as Kai has mentioned, and today I am going to help you out with 4 quick landing page tweaks to increase signups and sales. And these tweaks are brought to you courtesy of Frodo. Now you might be wondering what exactly a hobbit can teach you about increasing your conversion rate. Hobbits live in an agrarian society. They are pre-industrialist. They are probably a collectivist kind of economy, so they oppose capitalism. All these things seem to combine to suggest that Frodo knows nothing whatsoever about the internet. However, Frodo in this case is obviously not a hobbit. That would be completely insane. How could a hobbit help you improve your landing page? Frodo actually referred to a conversion rate framework which I've developed in order to make it simple to understand how conversion rate optimization can be applied to your site. Now your alternative is a little bit more complicated. So Frodo stands for first reaction, orientation, desirability, and offers. And of course, you're very welcome to grab a pen and paper and start taking notes if you would like to get hold of a cheat sheet that includes all of these kinds of things at the end, though there will be one. This is the thought sequence that your prospect, who I call Sam, goes through when he arrives on your site. This is the fundamental stuff that you need to address. And as I said, your alternative is a lot more complicated, and it looks something like this. It's a conversion heuristic which was developed by a company called Marketing Experiments, who do a lot of very scientific marketing testing, split testing, and so on. C equals 4m plus 3v plus 2i minus f minus 2a. If you would prefer not to have to learn that, and not to have to understand and apply that to your website, because frankly, you're more interested in selling the stuff that you're good at than in becoming a conversion optimization professional, I think you'll find Frodo very helpful. So stage 1 stands for first reaction. And the first reaction is very much a lizard brain kind of thing. So I'm going to put a question up here, and you're very welcome to actually type into the chat box and reply, or possibly Kai can do a poll. I'm not sure if that's happening. But the question is very simple. Do you ever judge books by their covers, or products by their packaging, or movies by their posters? Any of those sorts of things, and be honest. Now I think that if you are honest, And speaking from my own experience, we all judge books by their covers and products by their packaging and so on. That's just the way that our brains work. And it's not because we know that it's logical. In fact, we know that it's illogical. That's where the phrase, "don't judge a book by its cover," comes from. But our lizard brain, our limbic system, does a great deal of shortcutting for us. So the question that is first on Sam's mind when he arrives on your site is, how does the site make me feel? And just as when you see a poster which is attractive, or a book cover which is attractive, or packaging which stands out, it makes you feel positive about the product. And if the packaging or the book cover is of poor quality, or it's just amateur job, it looks shoddy, you assume the product is shoddy. So this is an intuitive snap judgment that we make. It isn't something which we think about very deeply. It isn't something which we are consciously aware of very often. It's made in the back of our mind. It's something which occurs automatically, and it's made within about 4/10 of a second. Again, this is not the neocortex at work, the logical thinking part of our brain. That takes longer to do stuff. It has to weigh facts. So this is the limbic system. The limbic system is often referred to as the lizard brain in marketing. It is the part of the brain where emotion and decision making largely take place. And it is a very, some would say, primitive part of the brain. It is a very simple part of the brain, would be a better way of putting it. It acts as a kind of bodyguard to our logical thinking centers. It filters things for us, and it helps us, or it tries to help us, make quick decisions and decide what we're going to look at and what we're not going to look at by using very simple criteria to weed out stuff that looks like it's going to be rubbish, and to push through stuff to our rational consciousness that it thinks is going to be worth checking out. And so because of this, it tends to govern the Odo stages. The first reaction that we have to a website is very important for actually moving us towards that orientation, desirability, and offers part of the process. So there is a quick tweak that you can make to your website which tends to improve the first reaction that Sam has. Here is an example of what I'm talking about in terms of the limbic system. When we look at a website, we actually judge it using the same basic neurocircuitry that we use to judge faces. So the more that a website resembles an attractive face, in the sense of having all the right bits in all the right places and all the right proportions, the more we tend to trust it. And it's silly, again, we know this isn't true when we consciously think about it, but when you look at someone who is attractive, when you meet someone who is good to look at, easy on the eyes, we tend to assume that they are trustworthy and that they are intelligent. And if you meet someone who is not, you tend to assume that they are not trustworthy, and quite possibly that they're not intelligent, but certainly that they might not have your best interests at heart. And this is probably no way more obvious than the way that people instinctively treat the physically disabled. If you meet someone in a wheelchair, you probably have been trained not to do this, but your subconscious reaction is to treat them as if they are mentally disabled as well as physically disabled. And you see that a lot in the way that people tend to talk down to people in wheelchairs and so on when they're off their guard and they're not realizing what they're doing. So the quick tweak that we can make is a reading-based layout adjustment, or some reading-based layout adjustments. This is to better put the pieces of the website, much like the pieces of a face, into the places that Sam expects them to be. So when we first arrive on a website, we're actually not looking for images, we're not looking for any kind of sharing icons or any of those sorts of things. We're really looking for information. We're looking for stuff to read. And we'll get into how we read in a minute. But first we need to understand that in order to make the website look promising, the limbic system knows that we need to read, and if it looks like reading is going to be hard, it tells the neocortex, let's not bother, let's go somewhere else, and so you hit the back button. So the first thing that's very important is to make it clear where to start reading. And this is something which is surprisingly overlooked on many websites, which is why I've included it in the quick tweet, because it's probably something that you can improve on your own landing pages. So obviously, in order to be able to read on the site, there must be a logical place to start, and it needs to be clearly and immediately identifiable. That's actually what Sam is looking for when he first arrives on the site, is a headline to decide where to start reading. Headline is what he reads first, it's what he's looking for first, in order to be able to decide, is the rest of this text worth it? So here is an example of a site which has not a great reading layout. In terms of knowing where to start reading, it's not very clear. And that's because we have, at the top, what looks almost like a banner ad, but is actually a headline, and it says Optimize New York. It's like putting your website on a billboard in Times Square. Okay, that's wonderful. It's actually not a bad headline in terms of the analogy being made. Underneath that, however, we have a second headline: does your website pass the 3C's test of marketing? Take the 3C quiz and find out. And underneath that again, we have a main content box which says New York business owners increase your website traffic by thousands of visitors a month. It's very unclear what you should be looking at first, and to add insult to injury, the 3C marketing quiz testy thing is asking Sam to move away from the page that he's currently on rather than get deeper into the copy. So in terms of making an effective landing page, things are not looking terribly good. Here is a second page which I found which does a much better job of showing where you should start reading. You'll notice that there is, at the top of the page, it says Tier 0, no hassle phones and data. However, this has been separated out subtly by using a slightly different background color. So there's a white background for that section, and then underneath that there is a gray background which indicates, hey, this is where the main content starts, that stuff above is a header, which is good because Sam is looking for information about where he is, who does the site belong to, so he can tell at a glance, okay, this is a Tier 0 site, that's great. And then the headline is very clear and prominent. It's standing out because of its color, it's nice and big, it says web service for your small business is only $25 per month per line. Very clear where he should start reading. There is, of course, a sidebar, a box on the right-hand side, but because we start reading left to right, there's no real danger that Sam is going to try to read that first. Salesforce should know better, being a big company with lots of resources for testing. Trusted CRM choice of 3+ million users, 3 million plus users. Try it now for free. Then there is what looks like navigation but isn't really phrased like navigation. Then there's more revenue, happier customers, better business. And then there's a third headline, find out why Salesforce is the world's most popular CRM service, a trusted CRM choice, etc., etc. And you'll notice that in all of these things, although they have separated them out using different background colors, it's very unclear as to what purpose each of these headlines serves and which one you should start looking at first. You'll also notice that none of them conform to the same margin. They're all kind of set differently. They're actually all center aligned, but the one on the bottom is shifted over to the left, so they don't have a nice central axis, as it were. And here is a CRM website which does a much better job. There is a clear left margin, which is something we'll talk about in a second. And the headline is very obvious, the sales and CRM application your team will actually use. Underneath that is a bit of extra copy and a call to action. There's no doubt about where to start reading. The logo at the top is clear as well as a logo. There's no danger that that's going to be considered a headline. All right. Now I mentioned the left margin before, and that is equally important in terms of making it clear where to keep reading, the left margin well, at least in Western world where we read from left to right, is firstly how we identify text that we should read. If you look at headlines, for example, that are more than maybe 2, possibly 3 lines long, if you center align those, they tend not to get read very well. Shorter headlines can be center aligned quite happily, but for longer text, we always look for a left-hand margin so that we can know where the text goes and that we can identify it as something to be read. And when we're reading, especially with longer text, our eye is always jumping back to the left-hand margin. That's where we anchor our eye path. And if we lose a left-hand margin, we have to find it again before we can keep reading. It's just how we read. So it has to be very clear where to keep reading, which means that your left margin needs to be very obvious. Now here is a page which has 3 left margins at the bottom and 1 at the top of the page. So the first half of the page is fine, really. It's not terrible. It could be worse, it could be better. The margin is clear. You can see obviously where you're supposed to read, but then you get down to the bottom of the page, you have 3 columns of text, and this is very much like having 3 people talking at once. Sam doesn't know which one to read first, and when we don't know what to do, we normally don't do anything. We don't actually just pick one arbitrarily. We kind of freeze up. And our solution to the problem is not to spend time reading each of the columns in turn. Our solution to the problem is actually to hit the back button in most cases. The other problem that you may notice with this text is that it's horrifically difficult to read because they have chosen to superimpose it in a dark gray over this image, which means that much of it is very low contrast. And that's another problem that Sam tends to have with text, is if it's got very low contrast, or even if it's got not as much contrast as it ought to have, it can be very hard to read. And that's something which is a problem in many modern web designs, where designers think that, you know, if you use a paler gray text on a white background, for example, it looks sleeker and more elegant, and so it's better. Well, it's not better for reading. And since reading is what you want Sam to do on your site, generally a good idea to avoid that kind of design. Here is a site which has a clear left margin. It doesn't have as much copy as I would like to see, so much as bullets, which are obviously a form of copy, but not a conversational form. However, it is very clear where you should be reading. Bullets all fall nicely down a left-hand margin, drawing the eye down. And here is a page which is, well, it's just very confused as to where you should start reading. You've got your image at the top left-hand side, which is, to a large extent, confusing Sam's eye path because he's not looking for images right now. He's looking for text to read. When people arrive on a website, they actually ignore the images until they have read some text. They're looking for text. They're hunting for text. Then we've got a couple of bullets, which is great, except that that nice left margin which has been created is then abandoned. And instead we're given several columns of text, 4 columns of text, which have no left margins. They're all center aligned. And then on the right-hand side there is another box. So where Sam should continue reading, or where he should even start reading, is unclear, but where he should continue reading is exceptionally unclear. He doesn't know where to look first. By contrast, if you wanted to do something like show on the previous page, basically what they were doing was they were trying to show features and benefits in a column of text. They used 4 columns and they had it all center aligned. If you wanted to do something like that, it certainly can be done, but 4 columns of text tends to be way too many. And if you want to use images, it's a good idea to make them very relevant. And the most important thing is to use very clear headlines. So here we've got a page which has several left margins, but each of them is reasonably long, and each of them is very logically laid out. So at the top there is your initial copy, all falling on the same margin, nice and easy. Then down the left-hand side we have bullets all conforming to a single left margin, and with very clear headlines so that you can scan down and you can easily see what the section of bullets is about. And if you're interested in that, you can continue to read, and if you're not, you can skip over to the next. And then on the right-hand side they have the same thing. So they're making good use of space, but without making it very difficult to figure out where to read, and by making it easy to figure out where to read by using these strong subheads so that Sam can fixate on what he's interested in and ignore the rest. It's also a very good idea to remove anything that distracts from reading. And I mentioned before that when someone arrives on a website, they're actually not looking for images. They tend to ignore images until they've read something, until they've found text to read. This surprises many people because there's this assumption that images are just something you have to have on a website, and that people are very image-oriented and that they really want to see something like that. That's true in print, I think. But the way that people behave and the way that people read on websites is actually quite different to what we're normally accustomed to in traditional advertising. So here is a page which uses an image at the top, and it's also got an awful lot of other things going on. If you were to remove all of the additional elements that are not necessary to this landing page, you would essentially have only the travel insurance. It's not really a headline. You could probably get rid of that, actually. You could get rid of the image. You could just say travel insurance direct from Aviva, save up to 20% when you buy online, and then it would have this copy in the center column. What they're doing instead, however, is they're essentially drowning their landing page in massive amounts of navigation. So the left-hand side is navigation. There's navigation along the top. There's navigation up the very top here, search. And then there's additional helpy stuff, ask us, advice and guidance, call us. And then at the very top there's also a thing that says we use cookies, and that's something which is recently put into law, but they could certainly have made it less obvious. By contrast, this website does use an image, but the image is conveying a lot of clear relevance. So it's showing what the application actually looks like. Not necessarily an ideal place for it because it's pushing the making timesheets easy and instant headline off to the side. So it's no longer on the left-hand side where we start reading, it's on the right-hand side and is therefore probably going to get ignored. What's going to happen is people are going to skip the image, therefore skipping all of this text, and they're going to start reading award-winning employee timesheet software. However, that's not as bad as the previous page. This page is pretty awful. Here we have several images which are of unclear relevance. The ad here is trying to show what you're getting, but because it uses a lot of text, it's confusing the eye path. And so Sam doesn't know if he's supposed to read this as text or as an image, so he tends to get confused. Then there's a sign up now box, which is way too early because Sam isn't yet ready. What is advertising web service? He starts to read the copy, but then he's got all of these boxes and things underneath, and he doesn't know where he should keep reading, and it's all very haphazard, and he feels confused, and so he hits the back button once again. And finally, Kissmetrics, a company that I have done some writing for. They are conversion oriented. They do a lot of testing. Here they've got a very simple landing page. It's very clear where to start reading. Google Analytics tells you what happened. Kissmetrics tells you who did it. It's very clear where to keep reading. Kissmetrics fills this gap. There is nothing to distract Sam. There are no extraneous images. There's no other boxes. The only thing that he can do is start his 14-day free trial, or he can sign in at the very top, very unobtrusive. At the bottom there is some very unobtrusive navigation. The only thing which you might consider to be distracting is the use of this graphic underneath the rest of the copy. But it doesn't really distract from the copy. It gives a subtle suggestion as to what exactly it is that Kissmetrics does, which is conveying relevance. And since it's not in any way obscuring the copy, and it's not an image which has a distinct border, or it's not a photograph or anything to grab Sam's eye, it's not going to be doing any harm. Right. Stage 2 is orientation, and Sam's limbic system is still very heavily in play, but his little old neocortex, the part of the brain where he does his conscious thinking, is starting to kick in now and starting to come into action. And the question that Sam has right now is, am I in the right place? He's gotten through the initial first reaction. He's decided to stick around on the site, but only for long enough to determine if he's in the right place. If he isn't in the right place, he's going to hit the back button. So it's very important to understand that Sam is actually trying to eliminate your site as an option, just in the same way that in the morning we go through our emails, we check out our inbox, and we scan through and we select everything that we can immediately delete. And we delete it before we don't even bother to read it. We just look at the subject line and the sender, and we know that we can delete that. We don't need to deal with it. We don't need to bother with it. The same thing happens very often when Sam is looking for solutions to problems, when he's looking for something that he is going to need to buy or something that he's going to need to use in some way, information, for example. He has a large number of sites open, and he is trying to narrow down the selection to something manageable. He doesn't want to read them all. He only really wants to read one of them. He wants to read the right one. And so he's trying to eliminate your site as an option to be read, which means that it must look promising to him at first glance. You've got maybe 4 seconds. If it's not good within 4 seconds, he's out of there. And within 7 seconds, it must be fully clear that he's in the right place, because if that initial, yeah, maybe I'm in the right place, of 4 seconds turns into, no, I'm not, after 7 seconds, again, he's out of there. Alright, so what can you do to increase the chances of Sam sticking around? The main thing, as I've mentioned, is that Sam is looking for text to read, and the way that he decides whether he's going to read the rest of the page is by looking at the headline. The headline is the one element that he is specifically looking for that is going to tell him, is this page what I'm looking for, or isn't it? So the information that he's looking for is usually something that he's come from another site. He's done a search, for example, on Google, or he's clicked a link on another website which has given him some context for what he is getting into on your page, which is referred to as information sent. And here we have a couple of examples. So I've done a search on Google for simple online accounting software. I've disabled my ad blocker so that I can actually see the ads. And I've clicked on one of the first links that shows up, online bookkeeping from cognito.co.nz. Now bear in mind that my search was for simple online accounting software, and online bookkeeping could be simple, so I click on the link. And what I get is a website that tells me how to really know my business with MoneyWorks accounting software. And I've highlighted some of the other subheads to give you a sense of, as I scan through the page, am I getting the right impression? Is that information sent being preserved? Am I still in the same context I started out on? So is this page continuing the thought sequence that I started by asking about simple accounting software? Well, I can see that it's powerful accounting and business information software. I can see that I can get better information and make better decisions. I can see that it's fast, and I can see that it's totally cross-platform. None of these are suggesting simple. In fact, they're kind of moving me towards the notion of complex. It seems to be a package designed for people who know a bit about accounting and who want to get a bit deeper into their businesses, financial flows, and so on. Completely the opposite of what I'm looking for. Whereas this first ad very much echoes what I've written into the search box. So I'm looking for simple online accounting software, and the reason I'm looking for it to be simple is probably because I'm not very comfortable with online accounting software. and I'm looking for something which will kind of ease my pain and will allay my fears. So the question, fear accounting software, is a very relevant one, and I think, yeah, I do a little bit, I guess. I click on the link. The very first thing I see is easy to use, which is essentially what I meant by typing in simple accounting software. Underneath there are some more subheads: straightforward and simple, automatic worry-free upgrades, and amazing customer support. So all of the main issues on my mind are being readily dealt with. That thought sequence that I've started is being continued in speaking of ease of use, in referring to how straightforward and simple the package is. It's also dealing with other possible concerns I would have about upgrades, so it's automatic and worry-free. And then even if something were to go wrong, there is amazing customer support. Now obviously, a headline which only preserves information sent isn't of much good if it isn't implying a promise about whatever is on Sam's mind. And it's actually very difficult to imply nothing whatsoever about what's on Sam's mind if you are actually preserving information sent. So that's the good news. The bad news is that it can actually be quite difficult to imply a promise in a clear and believable way. So to give you an example of what a good promise might look like, let's actually look at this previous site which I originally bagged because it didn't preserve information sent. Imagine now that I'm actually looking for software which does help me to really get to know my business, and which has some of the kinds of powerful features that I need to start digging down into my finances in order to make better decisions. Then all of a sudden, this headline looks fairly good. Get to really know your business with MoneyWorks accounting software. Okay, well, I do want to get to really know my business, so that's promising me the exact thing that's on my mind. And then the subheads also start to make much better sense, especially get better information, make better decisions, which is really what I'm all about. Conversely, if you were to show me this accounting software, this page, assuming that I was looking for something which would give me that kind of additional power and the ability to gain insight and analysis into my business, I'd probably think, well, this looks really simplistic. This looks like something designed for a left-brain person who has no real knowledge of accounting and really just wants to be able to quickly take care of his accounting because he hasn't got anyone to do it for him with any experience. Well, that's not what I'm looking for. So how you preserve information sent has a great deal to do with how you continue to promise what Sam is looking for. It is also very clear, very important. I shouldn't read my own notes. It's very important to use simple, clear, detailed, and quantifiable words. It needs to be all of those things. Simple, clear, detailed, and quantifiable. Simple because things that are complicated are hard to understand, and Sam isn't sticking around to try to figure things out. Clear for the same reason. Detailed because details add believability, and they also speak to very specific issues on Sam's mind. If you're too vague, even if you're clear and simple, if you're too vague about how something specifically relates to Sam, he isn't going to bother sticking around because he's going to feel like it isn't for him. And quantifiable, again, because of believability, and because the more you can prove something, the more you can say, here is actual objective proof of what I'm saying, the more Sam tends to trust it. So easy to use it's simple. That's very easy to understand. It's pretty clear. But it's not very detailed or quantifiable. In what sense is this software easy to use? What's easy for one person isn't easy for another. So if I think of something that's easy to use, I might be thinking of the user interface being very nice and simple, whereas someone else might be thinking of some kind of workflow-related issue. There are lots of different ways in which people will perceive this, and there's no detail given as to exactly what sense it's easy to use. There's no quantifiable information. Conversely, if you have a look at mint.com, they're using somewhat more useful language for SAM. It's easy to understand what's going on with your money. So they're not making exactly the same proposition as the previous company, but they are making a very clear one. It's simple, it's clear, it's more detailed, and it's quantifiable with respect to exactly what we're talking about. So what's going on with your money, as opposed to it's easy to understand how to use the program, or it's easy to understand where to click, or any such thing. They're using language, you'll also notice, which is very much the way that people speak. And it's important that you reflect the language that your customer would actually use, and not try to talk over his head or get really fancy. People are often tempted to use these very grand sounding marketing phrases, which ultimately when you try to boil them down, because they're not simple or clear, they're completely meaningless. They're very vague as to what they mean, and people don't tend to respond to that. So you could say it's trivial to comprehend the status of your finances, but that isn't how people speak. It's easy to understand what's going on with your money. It's a colloquial phrase, and so we respond to that because we understand what that means immediately. Another example of a fairly unquantified lack of detail causing problems here, the best email marketing tool. Well, in what sense is it the best? That's even more vague than easy to use. You know, the best email marketing tool for someone just starting out in email marketing is probably a tool which does everything for you. The best email marketing tool for me is one which allows me to easily adapt and modify things to my own use in very flexible ways. It's a completely different notion of what best means depending on who I am. Whereas MailChimp tries to do a slightly more quantifiable, tries to get into a bit more detail with its headline, easy email newsletters. So there's that word easy again. They're focusing on what specifically are people looking for in creating emails, and the main thing people have issues with is it's too difficult, it's too complicated. So they're saying that it's going to be easy. That could be clearer, but it's certainly clearer than it was before the previous page. And they're adding 2.5 million people use MailChimp. So it has to be, you know, this is something quantifiable. This is a detail which we can add to the headline to show it probably really is easy. It's not just a silly claim we're making because, you know, anyone can say that they create easy email newsletters. If you have 2.5 million people using the system, the chances are good that the reason they're using it is actually because it really is easy. Here is a headline which it's an attractive landing page. It's doing a few things wrong, but the headline is the main problem. Harness your brain's neuroplasticity and train your way to a brighter life. Well, it is detailed and quantifiable, but it certainly isn't simple or clear. It's not using language which people would normally use. It's not in any sense clear because we don't speak of harnessing in real life. We speak of using or making the most of, those kinds of phrases. We definitely don't use the word neuroplasticity in everyday life. I would wager that the average person probably doesn't really know what neuroplasticity means. And training is something which we tend to think is hard work. So that's a word to be used very cautiously. And a brighter life is very vague. What exactly is a brighter life? to me coming to this website. It could be many things. It could have to do with having more money, or it could have to do with having a family because I'm currently single. It could have to do with living somewhere better. It could be anything. Whereas this page, while being generally awful, does have a very good headline. For some reason, it's smack bang in the middle of a whole bunch of copy and looks like a banner ad. Maybe it is actually a banner ad. But if you were to put that headline on the previous page, think faster, improve your memory, you would probably find that you achieve a much higher conversion rate because you're speaking the language that Sam understands, and you're speaking in simple, quantifiable terms about the things that he wants to do. Another final example, get the CRM with a 360-degree customer view. Well, you can go too far with this idea of using colloquialisms, and especially cliches are a bad idea to use because people tend to ignore cliches or think that they are meaningless. Whereas here, high-rise remembers the important things about people you'd normally forget. Very simple language, very clear. Detailed enough, quantifiable in terms of it remembers things, it remembers the important things, it remembers things about people, and it remembers things you'd normally forget. Let's move on. We still have a lot of ground to cover. I would like to do some live optimization at the end if we have time. Stage 3 is desirability. And this is about the question, do I believe I'll gain more than I invest? And this is actually very largely a neocortex question. This is where Sam has been weighing his options and deciding whether he is going to actually, go ahead, whether it's going to be worth it. However, the limbic system is still strongly engaged at this point. He just doesn't really realize it. Perceived value, this seems really obvious when I put it up like this, but people frequently think about value in very funny ways. So here is a simple way to understand value. Perceived value equals perceived return minus perceived investment. So if Sam is feeling like he's going to need to invest more than he's actually going to return, more than he's going to get back, he isn't going to go ahead. The perceived value is negative. The perceived value needs to be positive, and it needs to actually be fairly strongly positive. He isn't going to go ahead and invest something just because he feels like he'll get a little bit back. It's not worth it. He needs to feel like the perceived return is going to be significantly greater than the perceived investment. Now, people think about value in, as I said, a lot of funny ways. And I mentioned before that Sam's neocortex is involved, but his limbic system is actually still strongly governing this process. And here is the reason why. People think about value mostly in terms of money. That's how we usually think as marketers. We think about return on investment in specifics, and return on investment to us is a financial phrase. To Sam, however, return on investment is not primarily a financial phrase, it is an emotional phrase. Is he going to get back the same sort of emotional satisfaction that he's looking for? Is he going to have to invest much in the way of emotion? And if he is he going to get even more back? One of the primary emotions on landing pages is anxiety. Is taking this action going to be worth it? Is it something which I'm going to regret? Do I know enough to take this action? This is one of the primary causes of anxiety, is lack of understanding, lack of knowledge, lack of clarity. So emotion is very strong, and this applies particularly if you're asking someone to call a number or get a call back or request a quote. Anything that involves actually dealing in person with someone tends to be a significant emotional investment. Because of the fact that we have to get to know someone, we're going to feel pressured maybe to buy something that we don't want to buy necessarily. There's a lot of emotional stuff going on when we talk to people. So you need to be able to assure Sam that the emotional investment is minimal. Hopefully the emotional return will be fairly high in terms of satisfaction, solving a problem that he has just causing him a lot of anguish. But of course there are other ways that you can emphasize return. One of the main ways is effort. Is he currently having to do something which is difficult? Will your product make it much easier for him? And of course, effort goes the other way. Is he going to have to go to a lot of effort to get what you're asking for? So making it quick and easy is one of the primary ways that direct response marketers have always increased sales, emphasizing speed and ease. And finally, money. Money obviously is a factor, especially in B2B. Money is important, but it's not the primary way that Sam judges value, because money is where his neocortex is judging value, whereas emotion and effort are where his lizard brain is primarily kicking in and saying, this is going to be too hard, this is going to involve too much difficult emotion, I'm not going to do it. So there is a quick tweak that you can use in terms of increasing value, intensifying value, and that is using images that intensify value, and only images that intensify value. So let me ask you a quick question, and I would love for you to type into the comment box and actually let us know what your answer is. On a scale of 1 to 5, how much value do you think this image conveys? I'll just give you a second to type in what you think.
There are the first reactions, the first votings here. We see a 0, 1, 1, very little to none, a 2, 2 is the highest, 3. So I guess we are around an average of around maybe 1 or 2. That's maybe the guess of the people.
Very good. All right. I'm going to suggest to you that this image conveys, if 0 is the very bottom, this image is a 0. If you can go negative, this image is actually conveying negative value. And the reason for that is that it's not conveying anything that intensifies value. It's not showing in any sense the product in use. It's not suggesting anything very helpful. It's showing a team which frankly are improbably happy, improbably pretty, and Sam senses this team that he's looking at does not work for Excel solutions. This is obviously a bunch of models who've been put together to take a photograph. And the problem with that is that that actually decreases Sam's trust, because there's an element of what Brent Cloker calls hoodwinksmanship. Sam feels like there's something subtly deceptive about using images of people who don't work for you on your site in such a prominent way. So you want your images to illustrate or demonstrate in a way that your copy cannot. And if they don't do that, you shouldn't use them. So here is a wonderful example. At the top we have what is actually a carousel, that those moving image banners. And as a side note, carousels simply don't get looked at. They suffer from banner blindness, so don't use them. People just don't look at them. They skip the carousel completely and start reading underneath it. However, if you were to read the carousel, you would see it says, "Discover new agility," which is a pretty rubbish headline, but let's go with the general idea. How exactly is the guy sitting in a suit and the woman standing next to him looking a little bit smug demonstrating agility? How is it demonstrating new agility? It's not. There's no sense of agility in this picture. And so the headline and the image are at odds with each other. And not only that, but obviously we know these people don't work for Arrow, so again there's that element of hoodwinksmanship. If you wanted to use an image, if you insisted on using an image as these fine folks did, you might think about using something like this, which the headline is smaller, faster, and more talented. And the image is clearly related to what the headline is saying. It's not demonstrating the literal capabilities of the company, because this is a digital agency, but it's using an analogy. It's using the metaphor of the motorbike jumping over the cars. Here's a page where the images are supporting the copy in the sense of showing what it is that you're going to be getting. So this is the easiest, fastest way to get documents filled out and signed online, and it has a screenshot. Screenshots are very important for selling things like online apps or services like this, where people want to see what they're going to get before they actually invest, especially they want to see that it's simple and easy to use and that it's not really ugly. The problem is the screenshot isn't very big, and the screenshot isn't well explained. So one of the problems that people tend to have is they see images before they're ready to understand them. And that's because designers are very keen on images, and they think that images need to be high on the page to grab attention. And so they stick them up there before they've given enough context for Sam to clearly understand what they're all about. This isn't a terrible example, but here's a better one. Here's one that's really using an image effectively. So Basecamp single-page projects keep everything together. With an entire project on one page, nothing gets lost, and your team always knows where things are. So it's introducing the concept. And then there is a very large, detailed screenshot where you can actually see things at what looks like more or less full size. It's probably been scaled down slightly, but it's still very clear. And then they've actually written on it with arrows to show you what you're looking at, so that there is immediate context. Every project has a place for a name and description, and it's got an arrow to the name and description. Discussion, decisions, and feedback are centralized, and it's got an arrow pointing to that, and so on. If you scroll down further, you would see that there were more points that were being shown. They're also using handwriting in quite an effective way to distinguish the notes from the screenshot, and also to give a sense of personality. This feeling of personal connection is quite important, and the more you can make Sam feel personally connected to you or to your company, the more he feels like there's a real person or real people behind it, the more he tends to trust you, and the more rapport he feels with you, the more likely he is to convert. So drawing attention to key points in a relevant way is very important. And let's have a look at a couple of other examples. Images on this page, you'll notice that I've highlighted in red on the left-hand side a box which uses a number of images. Now, if I were to remove the copy next to those images and ask you what you thought they meant, you wouldn't have a clue. A house, well, maybe that's a home link. A key, maybe it's a secure program. A life thing, it's got lots of help, maybe. A pencil, you can take notes. A briefcase, pass. A heart, people love it. And lots of money, it's expensive. So the images are not supporting the copy. They're not illustrating anything in the copy. They're basically meaningless. Conversely, here's the page that we looked at before with regard to iPath, and I mentioned at the time the importance of using relevant images. Well, these images are strongly related to the headline that they're sitting next to. Create Applications has a picture of an application which has been created. Monitor Your Brand has a screenshot of the actual process of doing that, what it looks like. Collaborate with Your Team has the same thing, and so on. So it's very clear exactly what you're getting. And I also mentioned creating the perception of a personal bond on that high-rise, was it high-rise? I think it was high-rise, Basecamp. On that Basecamp screenshot, we had the handwritten notes. So here are a couple of other ways that you can create a personal bond. Here's Arrow again with their lovely carousel. Boundless business. Do you feel a personal bond to any of the people in this picture? I don't. I know these people don't work for Arrow. I know that they've just been hired to look pretty and sit around a board meeting looking far more enthusiastic than they should. Whereas here is a vasectomy reversal doctor who is demonstrating very clearly that he is in a personal relationship with his customers, that he really cares about what he does because he understands that his customers want to have kids. They feel like they've made a mistake. They want to have kids. And here are some pictures of people's children who have been able to have kids as a result of the operations that he does. And everyone loves babies. Babies are a very strong kind of image to use because they create an automatic response, again, in that old limbic system. Even people who don't have babies or say they don't like babies tend to have a positive response if you look at MRIs to pictures of babies. Yeah. Who is this guy? Your business solution, the perfect theme to get started. Well, he's using his hand to point to it, so I guess it must be great, but who is he? And the pictures underneath, all stock images. They're very attractive stock images, but they're not conveying any value. Conversely, here's Basecamp again. Basecamp does a lot of really good stuff. Or 37 Signals, the company that creates Basecamp, does a lot of really good stuff, and this is just one example. And they've taken an actual picture of an actual designer at a place called Mighty Bytes. Her name is Joy. And she's got a little thought bubble that says, I keep track of project discussions, files, and events from beginning to end all in one place. It's great. So this is actually a testimonial, and it's showing a benefit. It's showing that someone actually uses the program and thinks that it's great, and it's showing what she looks like. So this is someone who is probably very similar to the ideal prospect, to Sam, who's landing on the website, and he can see, or she can see, hey, this person actually uses this product, and I can see what she looks like, and I feel like there's personal connection going on here. Obviously, faces are very important for personal connections because that's how we respond to people in real life. All right, stage 4, offers. Let's try and blast through this fairly quickly so we can get to some live optimization at the end. This is the point where Sam is asking, do my goals match the available options? Is what is being offered to me on the page what I actually want to do? So Sam wants you to help him. This might sound obvious, but if it is obvious, why do so many pages try to serve themselves instead of serving Sam? Your landing page is not made for you. It is made by you. It is made for Sam. Okay. And it's important to understand that Sam has only really read 20, maybe 30% of your copy. He skims pretty much everything. He's scanned your headline. He's got a good sense of what that's all about. He's probably looked at a few bullets. He'll have glanced through your copy for keywords and key phrases. He has not read everything, but he wants to do something right now. He is impatient. He doesn't want to read everything. He wants to do something. And that's just how we work, isn't it? So it's important that you adjust your offers to Sam's thinking and that you make the offers as clear as possible so that given what Sam knows, he can immediately decide, yes, this is something I want to do. The first thing you can do in this regard is change your way of thinking about your calls to action. Stop thinking of it as a call to action at all and start thinking of it as a give the payoff, a GTP instead of a CTA. So what this means is, instead of saying something like request a quote, which is just telling Sam what to do, emphasize what Sam gets. So here's that page that we looked at before with the terrible images, but it does have a good call to action. Start learning Spanish for free. That is what you get when you click on the button. It's also a very good idea to offer to help him to decide before offering to take his money. So rather than trying to convince him in the space of a single page, especially recognizing that he's only going to read 20 to 30% of a copy, rather than trying to convince him in the space of a single page to hand over his cash, instead offer to help him decide whether he should hand over his cash. So here is a company which is some kind of marketing company, acquire new customers by friend suggestions and word-of-mouth marketing, and you can register now. Now if you look up the top, you'll see that you can actually register for free. The problem is that's way out of Sam's iPath, and the register now link is what he's looking at, and he doesn't know what's involved in registering now. He doesn't know what kind of commitment he's going to be asked to make. He doesn't know how much money he's going to have to spend. And so he's likely to say, nah. Conversely, MailerLite uses a very good call to action, or give the payoff here. Try for free. Try is possibly a bad word to use because it has connotations of hardness. When you try to do things, it's because it's hard. Do or do not, there is no try. But you can try for free, and there's a little bit of extra text there. Free 30-day trial, no credit card required. And that's one of the things that a lot of companies do, is they say you can try it for free, but you still have to give us your credit card. And that creates anxiety. Why do I need to give you my credit card if I can try it for free? And giving Sam good alternatives is always a great idea. So, for example, you might have a landing page where he might be coming back for a second time or a third time. He might be driven there from an email campaign, for example, and you would like him to buy, and buying is a serious option that's on the table. But at the same time, he might be arriving for the first time, and he might need to decide whether he's going to buy. Giving people a couple of options has the benefit of removing that implicit yes or no decision and making it an either-or decision instead. So instead of deciding that he's going to click the button or he isn't going to click the button, it's a case of which button should I click. So here is invest in local real estate. This is Fundrise. 194 people have invested 3.2 million in their neighborhoods. Well, those are some scary figures. 3.2 million. Whoa. I don't have that kind of money, so join now. What's involved with that? But I do have the option of watching the video. I would make that watch the video the primary call to action, and I would emphasize what I get rather than what I have to do. So watch the video is basically telling me what to do, whereas saying something like learn how it works or see how you can be involved, or something along those lines, would be much more useful. But join now is definitely not what I want to do when I see that 3.2 million figure and I don't know more. Here's Cube Scripts, Instant Update 4. This is your personal CMS software with a large spectrum of features and an intuitive control panel interface. Learn more or try the demo of both. Low pressure options. Trying the demo is obviously something which will appeal to people who just want to dive right in and give it a go and see if it's something that they should bother paying for. Learn more is for those who are a little more reticent, a little bit more left brain perhaps. Sorry, right brain. And notice that they have weighted the two options differently. They're different colors. Not massively different, but subtly different. And that's actually quite important, because when we see two options that are the same color, the same size, the only difference in them is the text, we tend to freeze up. And we don't know which one to click. It's like when we've got two columns of text and we don't know which one to read. Same thing's going on there. And here's a site which is doing some stuff right and some stuff wrong. The picture, I think, is really strong because it looks like a real person who is really teaching a real kid how to play guitar. She looks like she's really cares about what she's doing. The kid seems to be, trying hard, but he's having a good time. However, they have superimposed the headline and the text over the image, making it very difficult to read. People don't read text which is superimposed over images. And the only real call to action, there is the get started with music lessons down here, but the primary call to action here, which doesn't have any kind of alternative that's really obvious in terms of color and so on, is to basically search for your teacher, find the type of music lesson, where you live, and who can teach you. My feeling is that if you were to, first of all, move this down so that it's not sitting on top of the image, but secondly, think about what Sam wants on his page. Maybe he's returning for a second time. Maybe he really does want to search for a teacher straight away. But if I were arriving on this page the first time looking for a music teacher for my child, I would want to know a lot more about how these teachers are selected, who they are, what kind of people they are, what sort of qualifications they have, what they've done in the past. All these sorts of things that are really important for my peace of mind, and also for knowing that the teacher is going to get on with my child who has a somewhat neurotic personality. Let's be honest, she's a bit of a drama queen. And I want to know that the teacher is going to be able to deal with that, is going to fit in well with the kind of family, as it were. So some kind of second call to action that would say something along the lines of meet our teachers or discover our teachers, something like that might be quite a good idea. And here is Dropbox, a company many of you are probably familiar with. Two very obvious calls to action. One is very clearly weighted heavier than the other by being bright blue. The second is gray. So sign up is the thing they really want you to do. But you also have the option to download, and of course you can watch the video as well. Right. First reaction, orientation, desirability, and offers. That is the way to get more leads and sales. And if you would like to grab a cheat sheet, which walks through how you adjust your layout for reading, write a headline that speaks to Sam's thinking, use images only if they intensify value, and present offers in a way matching Sam's goals, I have a kind of Cliff's Note version which actually goes into a bit of extra detail on some other stuff as well, very briefly, but it does mention other things which I haven't had time to talk about here. And you can grab that at attentionthievery.com/tweaks if you would like to. You may find it very helpful. And with that said, I would like to take some hot seats. I have about half an hour, so we'll do as many as we can. I think Kai has said 3. That's probably reasonable. And if Kai could just shoot through the links, then I will get that done.
Yeah, we have a couple of volunteers here, and we will see what we can pick and analyze and see what's can be done there. Can you see the URLs now? We have just put them in the chat. Just give me a second and I will post them to everybody here.
Yep, I sure can. I've loaded them up in my browser.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So burtgroup.com. Couple of things that stand out first up. Obviously, we've got this carousel up the top, and you'll notice that it's moving pretty quickly as well. So you start reading, okay, star plus stem, instruction and structure. The Burt Group is partner. Oh, there it's gone. No way I'm going to read all that copy in the time that I've actually given. So even if people were reading carousels, which all of the research shows us that they are not, they just do not read them because they treat them as ads. There simply isn't enough time to read them anyway, and so the first thing I would do is I would simply eliminate that carousel. I know that carousels are very popular because of the fact that there's a kind of, especially in larger companies, I think there's a lot of politics that goes on with the homepage. And people want their share of landing page space, homepage space, and they want to emphasize the thing that they think is important. And so a compromise is reached. They say, well, let's use the same piece of real estate for all of you, and we'll simply rotate it around so that you each get your fair share. It's not a good compromise. It doesn't work. Decide what your homepage is supposed to do. What is the option that the offer that you want to make to Sam, the action you want him to take, and focus on that without worrying about inter-office politics and who gets what and so on. You need to have some kind of leadership who can make a decision there and say, this is what the homepage is going to be for. It's going to have these options. It's not going to have a carousel because carousels don't work and so on. The other thing is you have the images here, I think, are reasonably good. They do seem to be specifically related to the college itself, or the book group, I should say. I don't know for sure that they're really necessary, but the columns of text here are probably problematic because they're the sorts of things where you've got three people talking at once. I don't know which one to read. So what I might do, if you were to keep the columns, it would probably be a good idea to get rid of these images, because they're separating the headline and the column. I assume the headline and the column are related: school improvement, 3-year plan, etc. Go to school improvement. So these columns are related, but the images aren't clearly related to them. They're not actually showing anything that the copy could say equally well. That said, I would probably try to avoid columns like that, especially on such a narrow page, and especially when you've got these online tools on the side. The real question in my mind is what do you want people to do here? And I know homepages can be a problem because of the fact that you have all of these different things that people might want to do. One way to deal with that is with very clear navigation, obviously, so that's a place that people will often go if they're looking for something, and your navigation looks pretty good in that regard, except for star. What is star? Do people know what star is before they come? Because if they don't, they're probably not going to click on that link. The other thing is, you've got this go to college and career readiness, go to school improvement, and go to program evaluations. It might be a good idea if you made the copy here not necessarily shorter. I think spreading it out a bit would help, and then putting these online tools perhaps underneath. You've got a good separation of main content with the other stuff, so that's good. But it's really a case of asking, what do people want to do on the site? What are the things that we want them to do? And how can we present those options better? At the moment, I feel like there are a lot of things that I could do, and I'm not sure which one I should do. That could probably be improved. Costa Rica. All right. Is this a carousel as well? Yes, it is. Having said that, it's not the worst carousel I've seen. One reason is that it doesn't actually have text superimposed on it. The only text is actually a caption. Now, captions do tend to get high readership. So in terms of showing different options or different vistas or different pictures of what people are going to be looking at when they come to Costa Rica, it's probably not a bad option. I'm a little bit wary of it because of the fact that I know people do ignore carousels still. So I might try to find a way to, instead of having simply a banner-shaped image, it might be a good idea if you were to redesign the section to emphasize that these are photographs that people can look at. So possibly having some kind of Polaroid effect, like having a series of photos with one standing out in particular at a slight angle with a white border around it or whatever. Something like that could work to emphasize to people that this is a series of photos that they can look at if they're interested, as opposed to a banner which they're probably going to ignore. The main issue here is the lack of headline, Costa Rica.com empowering your vacations and real estate purchases in Costa Rica. It doesn't stand out for a start, and it's not really simple, clear, quantifiable, and detailed, in the sense that, firstly, empowering is a very odd word to use. People don't use that word in real life. Vacations and real estate purchases in Costa Rica is good because that's specific to what people are looking for. But this empowering word is going to be a bit of a hang-up. In what sense do you empower people? What is the specific thing that you do for them? What is the key benefit that they get? How do you do that? Can you explain it in more accurate language? That would probably help quite a lot. I'd also think about, if you're going to have these images, I assume the images are basically to help people realize that Costa Rica is beautiful. Now, if they already know that, probably there isn't any need for the images, because you're better served using that space for something like a longer headline, a headline which includes perhaps a short headline and a longer subhead which explains it. And of course, some body copy and bullets would be really helpful there as well, to help people to understand what it is that you do and what it is that they can do. And then, what exactly are you wanting them to actually do on this page? There are lots of options. Are these clickable? Yeah, they are. People often assume that images are either not clickable, or if they click them, what they're going to get is a bigger image. So it's not really clear that these are actions that they can take. I would try to narrow down the options here. Say, what are the two main things people are going to want to do on this page, and give them those two main things as strong calls to action. If there really is going to be more than two main things, if it's going to be like many things, like say 8 things or 10 things or a dozen things, then it's time to think about presenting those options differently, perhaps with something like a configurator where people can, you say, what is it that you're wanting to do? And they have like 3 options they can select. Once they've selected those, it automatically gives them 3 more. It says, okay, so out of those options, here are your best alternatives, 1, 2, and 3. That helps to narrow down things very quickly and easily for people. They can easily follow the process and get to where they're going, and they feel like they've been helped along. The other thing here, excuse me, the other thing here, apart from the lack of copy, is these the feature story, the upcoming events, the legal advice, the travel blog. These seem like unimportant things for a homepage, things that people probably don't care about, actions that they're not interested in taking. So my suggestion would be move these up into the navigation, put them somewhere that's taking up less important real estate. Follow us, well, again, do these links represent actions that are really important for people to take? Are people actually doing this? If people aren't clicking these buttons, there's no point having them there, and all they're doing is distracting attention from the stuff that really matters. Marinka Permanent Cosmetic Centers. Before and after shots are really powerful. So in that respect, I think you're doing a good job. People love to see before and after pictures and look at what things looked like before you did something and how it turned out afterwards, what the result of your service was. That is a very powerful kind of proof that can't be demonstrated with copy alone. You can try to describe to someone how awesome it was, but there's just no way that you're going to make it work. However, again, this is in a carousel. It's a rotating image. It's probably going to get skipped over because of that banner blindness. The images on the right-hand side, eyebrows, eyeliner, lips, tattoo, newel, etc. I'm assuming that these are actions that you want people to take. Again, this isn't really clear. Even just having some copy that said something like, what kind of service are you looking for? What do you need help with? Something along those lines would help significantly in terms of making people understand these are links I can click on to get a more specialized view of what I'm after. However, I think that the main thing is probably putting the copy in a more accessible location, and probably increasing the contrast a little bit as well. The background is quite dark compared to the copy itself, which is going to make it a bit hard to read. The copy could probably be bigger, and it could certainly have more space between the lines to make it a bit easier to read. And the headline, "Welcome to Marine Permanent Cosmetic Centers," not really emphasizing any benefits. I would definitely think about try to single out, maybe ask your customers in particular, what is the one thing that really appeals to you about Marika? Why do you come to us? What particularly impressed you about us? What was that made you choose us over someone else, and so on? And try to narrow down some key benefit, some key issue on Sam's mind that you can talk about in the headline and then refer back to in the copy, and start making some actual promises. Use some bullets. Bullets are very important because they're very scannable, to emphasize key benefits or key features. And then use the images perhaps on the right-hand side next to the copy to demonstrate what the copy cannot. So rather than having this carousel at the top, use this real estate for copy, and use the space that you've saved to actually separate out all of these images into before and after shots that you can put sequentially down the page next to the copy, so people can actually look at them one by one and see them all on the page at once. It might also be worthwhile thinking about moving procedures into navigation. So you've got procedures here. If you simply move this into a drop-down menu, you would save a lot of space that doesn't really need to be used up here, and you would have a lot more space for the images. Once you've got that copy of those images in place, then you can actually start thinking about, at the bottom, calls to action become important, obviously. What are the offers that you want to make Sam? And at that stage, the 6 main options are clear. Presenting 6 calls to action tends to be problematic because it's enough that Sam feels overwhelmed. But it may work in this case. It's worth testing. But you would definitely want to make it much clearer that these are actually clickable options. So have something like eyebrows, click here, with a little button perhaps, eyeliner, click here, etc. And probably some kind of subhead that would say, click on the option that best suits what you're looking for, something along those lines, to emphasize what Sam can do. All right, did we have one last one? I think Teresa has. Yeah, we've got a couple more actually.
It's okay if we pick this one as the last one. It's not a complete home page. It's a more or less a landing page. So that's what's the target for this.
Very good. Okay. So the first thing that strikes me is that it's not really clear where to start reading and where to keep reading. One of the big reasons for that is that we've got a couple of bits of text up the top here which look like they're part of the content but which are actually testimonials. Not necessarily a bad idea to have testimonials, obviously, but the way they're presented kind of starts the eye path off in a haphazard, erratic way. There we've got an image on the left-hand side which is pushing the text out to the right, which is the opposite of where we naturally want to read. And the other problem that you'll find with this text, and this is a bit of a blow to us as designers, so I can sympathize, is that people ignore text which is formatted in a fancy way like this 899. It's really visually dominant, and it will catch the eye, but people will glance at it and immediately look away. They won't read a complete web design package starting at, because the 899 has grabbed their attention so strongly that they didn't read what was above it, and people don't read upwards, they read downwards. But the main problem is that people think that anything which is formatted in a very fancy or very large or very bold, bright way is probably an ad. And there's a great example from Jacob Nielsen. He did some research where people had to go to a website in the UK, I can't remember which company it was, but they were looking for deals on dishwashers, if I recall. And on the website there was a big carousel which had, in very bright, very similar to this actually, it was green, but it was a very similar kind of formatting, a big bright thing that said $100 or £100 off. The only thing people had to do on the website was find out whether there were any special deals on dishwashers. There was this big, bright £100 off dishwashers thing in the top in a very similar format to this, and not a single person was able to find a deal on dishwashers on that website. So my guess is people are ignoring this 899 completely. They're probably reading quality web design, which is good, these little bullets here, but they're most likely skipping down straight away to everything you need, package. Again, the formatting here is going to suggest that this is an ad. The see all packages, they're probably not going to click on that because it looks like part of the headline. They're going to want to see that at the bottom underneath the money back guarantee. So the haphazard eye path, the fancy formatting, that's going to be causing problems. I would definitely think about a headline which strongly speaks to the main issue on Sam's mind. Is the main issue everything he needs in a single package? Is it something else? Whatever that main issue is, that should be the headline. The contact us box, you need to think about whether this is an action Sam is actually going to take on the site, or whether he would be better served with some kind of information package. What I usually recommend in terms of landing pages, if Sam is getting driven here from, say, a Google ad or whatever, you're probably best off not trying to convince him to buy anything right now, but rather giving him information which will help him to buy later. And in the process of giving him that information, obviously you can capture his email address, which means you have a way better chance of selling him in the long run because he hasn't bounced off your page. You've still, if he does bounce off your page, as he probably will, you still have his contact details, and you can get him to come back, whereas you can't get him to come back usually in any other way. Even with remarketing, it's still a lot less effective than using email marketing. I would get rid of the name and phone fields. I would just have an email field that will reduce your friction by 2/3. And I would change the submit button. That is not a call to action. Well, that is a call to action, but it is the worst call to action possible. You may have seen the poster online. It's kind of a meme that says, never submit. There is a reason that the word submit is the poorest performing call to action button copy in the world. Change it to a give a payoff, to something that Sam is going to actually really want to get, and make it more dominant on the page. Try not to split the iPath up so much. Customer examples, this is quite good stuff. It may be unnecessary for a landing page, and again, contact us. It looks like the actual action that you want Sam to take might be a little bit confused on this page. Do you want him to look at more stuff? Do you want him to contact you? Knowing exactly what it is that you want Sam to do on the page would be basically nailing that down and making the page all about that action would be a good start, rather than dividing his attention. My suggestion, of course, would be to give him some kind of free information, something like 5 things you need to know before hiring a web designer, or anything that implies some kind of special knowledge, something that will help him make a decision, like 5 things web designers don't want you to know about the way that they deal with customers before you hire them, or something like that. Anything like that is probably going to get a reasonably good conversion rate, and then you can use that to talk about things that you don't do, or things that you do which are good that other companies don't, and that gives you a great point of difference that you can then use to sell them. All right, it's 1:30. I unfortunately am out of
Yes.
time.
Well, Nan, we
But I
definitely
hope this has been
appreciate your
helpful.
time today. We
Yeah,
appreciate
no
all
problem.
the useful information that you've provided us. And again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I hope you walked away with some great information that you can apply to your business. We look forward to providing additional webinars to our reseller community throughout the year. Be on the lookout for an invite in the next month. Also, we'll be sending out an email with recording later this week to all the attendees. We appreciate you attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.